Good evening, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at this session. As the head of the Ghurair Foundation for Education, I have had the honor of working with multiple institutions in the region and internationally, but three in particular who have really worked incredibly hard to create new and better realities for post-secondary education in the Arab region. And we have the good fortune of having them on this panel today. So our partnership with the American University of Beirut, the American University of Cairo, and Luminous Technical University College in multiple areas in the region has dated back to 2015. We collaborated with AUB and AUC, with MIT, so these regional universities would receive the best support to develop blended learning courses. We continued with AUB's Faculty of Engineering and Architecture, and now we're looking at a multi-year project where we're working on bringing it all online. And finally, we started with Luminous Technical University in Jordan in 2018 to support 1,800 refugees and vulnerable Jordanian students. And now in 2019, we're happy to say that there was the launch of the Luminous Technical University College, created the Abdul Aziz Ghurair School of Advanced Computing in partnership with Coding Fellows Seattle. So these are really cutting edge leaders in how to move into the space of online learning. And we have three representatives today. So Dr. Aziza Ellozy is the Associate Provost for Transformative Learning and Teaching at the American University of Cairo and the founding director of the Center for Learning and Teaching. She's responsible for supporting AUC's digital education initiative. And during the pandemic, she headed the effort to prepare AUC's faculty for that brusque transition to online learning and teaching. We also have Loay, and I'm going to apologize, Loay, I'm going to do my best, Malahmeh. He is a social entrepreneur, and when you get to know him and discover him, he thinks so holistically. He lives in a space where technology, social innovation, music, martial arts, and education meet. It's an amazing space. He led the establishment of the Abdulaziz Ghurair School for Advanced Computing at Luminous Education and has managed to graduate some very smart individuals who are now working remotely from some very remote areas. And finally, we have Dr. Alan Shihadeh, is the Dean of Engineering and Architecture at the American University of Beirut and is leading the transformation of the Maroun Semaan Faculty of Engineering and Architecture. And he is MIT trained, and he's a leading researcher on the health effects of regulation of tobacco products. So we have this incredible diversity. And I'm going to start with Loay, if I can ask you a question. You've spoken a number of times about the fast adaptations that Luminous needed to make in response to the pandemic. And now you're doing a retrospective of what has happened and how you're going to move on to this next chapter. And I remember at one point there were a few moments when you said, I don't know how we're going to do that, and then you did it. And now you're actually making progress to institutionalize it for the future for online learning. So if you could speak a little bit about some examples on how that came about in the last year.
Thank you, Dr. Sonia, and I'm really honored and happy to be joined also with this esteemed panel. It's still shocking for me, actually, because I was when I was preparing for this interview and looking back at what happened with us before COVID, I can still remember the day we were like paranoid about, yeah, it's gonna now go to remote working. What are we going to do? We are prepared or not? So we actually created like an emergency plan. I remember back in March, before knowing if it's going to be a full lockdown or not. We call it the four pillars of a resilient remote work transformation. And especially as an education for employment institution, maybe I can, before I speak about our experience, like Luminous Education is the largest education for employment provider when it comes to vocational education in Jordan. We have graduated in the past 2 decades over 50,000 students with an 80% employment rate. We are a team of 1,000 people, and currently we have around 6,500 students with us in multiple disciplines. Like we have 12 schools of excellence. The recent one is the School of Advanced Computing, where we focus on delivering career-focused education and technology sector, specifically in software engineering, cybersecurity, and AI. And we were just starting the school. It was like everything that we've done for the past 15 months was like piloting, making sure that we have a full model, and because this is a very interesting, and this is the future of work. Like the talent that's basically focusing on employment within this field are huge, and the potential is great around the world. So when we started, we set the first rule of the first pillars of the remote transformation was to have a prepared mind. So it's okay to be paranoid. We established like we can't change that. We have to understand the situation and start preparing, like have a mentality of preparation versus production. So we started looking at what we have today. How can we move from the in-campus education to the fully virtual education? And that's led us to focusing on the team. So we empowered the team. We created like digital transformation task force. We started documenting a lot of the processes. So anything that we use once, we document immediately. So it becomes like an SOP or a tool for us. So we can reference and go back, and then we start looking at the best integrated tools and softwares and trying out all of that. Like A/B testing happened in a very, very short time, where we already planning for a full digital transformation like in the coming years. But we had to, due to COVID, to accelerate all of that transformation. And I had to thank like literally the state-of-the-art technical team that we have, where they managed to utilize all of these tools to put over 6,400 students online, and we managed since March to give over 40,000 classes with a 92% attendance rate. So this is for us was really good, and we start monitoring everything, having SOPs, manuals, and adopting different cultures and studying about remote education and how can we do it. And we actually, because most of our students are coming from vulnerable backgrounds, and during the impact during the lockdown, we literally put them as our first priority. And for example, we had refugees, we have students in remote areas. So our management immediately talked to the ecosystem about delivering like bundles of internet to remote areas. Our CEO himself was literally driving during the lockdown, delivering laptops and internet dongles to refugees and around the country. All of these at the same time, all of our instructors that we delivered laptop speakers, headsets, cameras, in order to make sure we have a very seamless educational process. And we're still learning. Like until today, we've managed. Now we're experimenting with virtual. So sometimes the students come 2 days at the campus and they spend the rest virtually. And we managed to digitize all of our experiences from acquisition to employment. And we had people starting with us virtually and finished with us. And we have, for example, a refugee and somebody who lived like outside of Jordan, like in a very outside, sorry, Amman, the capital, now working with an AI institution, like somebody who studied civil engineering 6 months ago with unemployed. Now he's working with an AI company. Somebody who studied sports therapy, after 6 months of taking this program, now they're employed as a UI UX designer, and from different backgrounds. So this is exciting for us to see this impact, and we're looking forward to scale it. So still, I think we're not post-COVID. We're just adapting on a daily basis, and it's a great learning experience. The idea of how can we efficiently adapt and grow all of these activities.
Dr. Aziza, would you like to respond? You'll need to unmute. There.
I forgot I was muted. Okay, I would like to share the experience also that we had at the American University in Cairo. And of course, our context is quite a bit different than Loay's. We are a liberal arts university, very much like Beirut, AUB. with the minus the medical school, and we are a little younger than AUB, but and there is we have about 6,500 students, the same as I was talking about. Most of them are undergraduate. We have about 1,900 graduate. So a lot of the focus was to get everybody, like everybody else, immediately online. I think our provost was really he had the far side, because by middle of February, he called me in and he said, it's not a question of if we're going to get COVID around here, it's when. So I would like to plan immediately to see how we're going to be able to train everybody. Now, I have to say that, with the Center for Learning and Teaching at AUC, we had a strong background of some of the faculty very much interested in technology, very much interested in innovative teaching and so on. So we had a cohort of about, I would say, 15 to 20% that probably were quite ready to embark on the experience. But there was a bulk of others that would use tools, but just as needed, all right, and so on. And so our plan was to get everybody as much as possible to do the basic training on certain pedagogies and also certain tools. So we planned it for over a period of 12 days, and it was voluntary. I mean, faculty didn't have to attend. If they wanted to, they would, because that's the way faculty are. I don't know about your institutions, but I think they're pretty, individualistic people. We have 700 plus faculty. Most of them are full-time, but a big chunk also are part-time. Of these, 540 did attend during those 12 periods. They were coming in droves, and we had divided them depending on what was. There were 4 basic stations, if you wish, and they had these long trainings. So in a sense, we were pretty happy with ourselves. When the day came, I think we were the first university in Egypt to close the door. So we closed our doors, and we were waiting impatiently for the first reports of what is going to happen with the students once they're it's completely online. And what we did is to have surveys for faculty and students for the first every week for about 4 weeks, so that we get class by class and faculty by faculty to have a feedback of what is happening in case there are any gaps we needed to address. And immediately they were addressed. The Center for Learning and Teaching and the staff really did not almost sleep for about 6 months. These past 6 months, they were working like crazy. They were giving webinars depending on what was needed and so on. So in a nutshell, I just want to tell you that we thought that we were extremely well prepared. And the students at the beginning, they had basically connectivity issues, and they were sometimes not too happy because they didn't know what the plans were not in place as much as they wanted to, and so on forth. And so the first semester, we thought it was on the whole a pretty good, a pretty successful experience, so when we typically have summer courses. So by the time we were going to embark on the summer courses, we said we're going to take whatever we've learned, and this time give a proper online courses, online teaching courses. We're going to do it the way, like, typically it's done, how you design the courses, how you, and it's on one-on-one and so on. And so we did that. It was really, the faculty would come for a whole day, an institute, and get prepared for the 6 weeks summer course. That worked quite well. In our feedback of the summer courses, students were happy. We didn't have any complaints. I have to say that in the spring we used to have complaints, but it sort of got muted when we said that they could choose a pass-fail option in their courses. So they sort of relaxed. They were very, very stressed. And so after the summer things, we thought that we really had it packed, that this institute that we had, this full day institute that we had, we're going to be able to scale it out for the rest of the summer. All the faculty are going to attend and they'll be ready for the fall. Well, they did attend. We had a very large number coming, and I have to say this time it was much more rigorous. They were attending the whole day. They would have their syllabi. Again, it was voluntary, but at least 50% of them would, in fact, give in the syllabi redesigned to teach online. So it was no longer remote teaching. We were hopefully, doing it. We're getting ready for online. And I have to tell you, the fall was tough. The fall was tough because I think everybody thought that everybody was ready, and they've taken the best, as good a training. We had all kinds of, we had Zoom, we had Blackboard, we had and students that didn't have the connectivity, like, or those that were find it financially difficult to do it, these were provided for, and so on. And again, we started, surveying them. We surveyed them after 2 weeks, and we surveyed them in the mid-semester. And the first week, everything was perfect. We were getting a fairly high response. And the second one, the mid-semester, 30% of the students responded. And again, we had some, problems here and there. And then the mid-semester hit, and students were very stressed. They were very, very stressed. And it has been a constant thing, what is it that we can do better? And faculty was stressed, and so on. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's been, for those of us, I think we have a pretty good support system, extremely good, whether it is from the pedagogical point of view, whether it is one-on-one consultations, etc. And on the whole, faculty much prefer coming back to campus. They still want the face-to-face. The students feel that also they prefer face-to-face rather than this online experience. So what we're just trying to do is to make it as best possible for both. And so it's really a struggle over here. A struggle mainly because our expectations are very high, so you thought of the expectations there. And so, this time we did it extremely well. The students should be very happy. Now, on the other hand, people like myself have been reading what's going on all over the world, and the same main problems are all over. The main thing is the workload. Students are given more or less the same workload, but to them it appears much more. And the reason is for many reasons. They're home, they're in front of the computer, the interaction with their faculty sometimes is not as good. Some faculty have been extremely successful. Others are struggling more. But the interesting thing to me is that what they're doing is really emulating what they do in class. In other words, that's the best thing, that students are most comfortable if you give them the lecture that like you used to do, the midterms and so on. And what we were trying to do is really translate that into what a real online experience should be, where this is partly asynchronous, partly asynchronous, and so on. And so, we're really looking this model. If it works for some, but for some others it doesn't, because they cannot get the interaction going if they do it online the way normally online courses happen. So essentially I still call it remote online teaching, because what we're doing is emulating what we do in class. That's what we're comfortable with. What student, you have the you meet with the students on Zoom. You do your, if it's a discussion-based class, you do the discussion in class. You go on with the reaction papers, etc. Very getting as quickly as close as possible. However, the graduate...
Dr. Aziza, before we move on again, I want to make sure that we hear also from Dr. Allen, and I'll come back to this. But I'd really love to hear, because I've heard from you and Loay that that the challenges are continuing, and the students are still struggling, and so are faculty. And interestingly, what AUB is doing is saying, but we're going to take this way beyond the pandemic. We're moving beyond remote teaching. And I was wondering, Dr. Allen, would you talk a little bit about making that move? And it was a very bold decision, and it was made pre-pandemic, from my understanding.
Yes, Dr. Sonia, thank you. And very much of what I heard from Loay and Aziza were resonating with me. I mean, we faced many of the same experiences, both with access to internet and as well as faculty getting up to speed with giving online learning. But so let's talk about where we're going. It so happened that we actually had a head start in a way. Of course, we've been talking about going online for 20 years. But we decided with you, AGFE, to start doing something about this and actually implementing it. So back in October 2019, we were actually at a workshop at Arizona State University. My team and I were there, the team that were going to be leading the online transformation of AUB, and particularly the Engineering and Architecture School. And the uprising in Lebanon broke out. And this uprising was, a very, very wide popular participation. The students wanted to be part of it. Some students wanted nothing to do with it. Others wanted to be there on the street, and the same for the faculty. And our whole educational operation was disrupted for weeks and months on end, on and off. And it was during that time. So we were actually in Arizona reading about this, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to fly back home. And by the time we got back home, the streets were alive and on fire in a way. And we had to start implementing from day one plans that we had to start rolling out from day one, plans to save the semester. And so, right away we did many of the measures that Aziz had just described, which is basically just transform your classroom experience and put it on a computer, which of course is a very poor version of what digital immersion technology has to offer. So to fast forward, I mean, we experimented with that. We gave faculty a lot of workshops using our in-house instructional design team. And we continued working with you and your team on developing our prospects for doing a massive online transformation. In the middle of this, of course, we went right from the uprising and the crisis into a financial free fall in the country. The Lebanese lira dropped by 80% of its value, so our budget had been cut 70% over a few month period. And then COVID-19 came on. So we were kind of already in this crisis mode of figuring out how does a 150-year-old university that's really built on the student experience, it's kind of like the Ivy League University of the Middle East in a way, how does it pivot in a few month period to looking more like what Loay is doing with Luminous? And so we are right now training faculty. We are also training instructional designers. We found a big gap in the availability of instructional designers in the region to work with faculty to do high-end, properly designed, engaging courses. We identified 125 courses that we need to digitally design in the best, to the highest standards, to what we expect of online learning. 6 or 7 programs, including several certificate programs and full online degrees. So all of this is being developed right now. We're doing this with really on a, let's say, on adrenaline at this point because of all of the crises that are happening in Lebanon. Our faculty are, some of them are extremely excited and very engaged in this. Others are somewhat weary and understandably overwhelmed and tired and worried about the future of the country as much as they're worried about the future of their university and their profession. So it's been an amazing ride. I'm not sure where this story will end. I expect it will end in a good place, especially with our partnership with you and others. And I have many other things I could tell you about, but I think I don't want to take up too much space in this conversation, so I'll just end it there.
I'm going to come back to you on partnerships, but not about our partnership. And I want to first draw on Loay because one of the things that I want to make sure comes up is the partnerships with corporates. I know that AUB has been very active in getting corporates involved. And Loay, I know that on your end, it is part of the design process. Can you talk about, in looking forward now, what is the role of corporates in how they're going to support higher ed in getting graduates in this new environment?
Thank you, Dr. Sonia. I think we're a demand-driven institution. We're a social enterprise. We're for good, but also for profit. And everything that we do has to be based on the market demand. So the first step in designing any school, we don't design it out of nowhere. We just literally go to assessing the market. We do the research. We ask the employers themselves. When we started the School of Advanced Computing, the first step was inviting all of the top tech employers, similar to like Amazon, Expedia, all of the association of technologies company. We invited them and literally to come to the campus for a roundtable discussion and basically kind of asking them about their challenges in terms of defining to us what the ideal employee, what are the problems of the ecosystem. And we found out back then in Jordan, we have in the ICT ecosystem 30,000 people, students studying currently, and each year we have 5,000 to 6,000 graduates with a 70 to 80% unemployment rate. And the people who are employed are either half of them work in what they study and the other half basically change their career. So there's a huge misgap between what's coming from the education system and what are the market required, what are the market demands today. So the ecosystem got back to us, the local and the regional, by three main skills. They told us the technical skills that they required, whether it's a language or a technology. They told us like we need full stack JavaScript, we need Python, we need cybersecurity AI, and minimum English level required. So the like we said, 5.5 IELTS or anything equivalent, and the soft skills, problem solving, communication, and so on. So these three top skills were the ground base of our research to find the right education provider, because we don't develop any curriculum. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So we collaborate with the best provider around the world, and we localize the material. So that hence our partners in Seattle they have a 94% employment rate, and their graduates work at Facebook, Google, Microsoft. So we basically localized their material. Lastly, they became our education partner. And now we're actually developing an interesting program for the employment. We call it the Guaranteed Training and Employment Program. We already talk to the employers. We assess their demand for the next year. They tell us we need X amount of people, like we need 50 people to employ next year in these languages. And we work with them from day one. And we actually offer, because we also offer student finance, which is one of the big challenges today. The student aid is one of the things that we're focusing on. And this is an invitation for everyone to look at what the Ghurair Foundation for Education are doing. We need more people literally investing in the future of education, because it's not our program is not cheap. It's really expensive, but because this is the structure of the such kind of bootcamp models, or because we offer courses and we offer diploma degrees, but the courses are what's known today as the micro credentials, which is the future, I believe, for the blended learning. So for us today, we already work with employers from day one, from designing the school to the process itself of reviewing the curriculum to the employment part. So they are already involved during that. We send them to come and talk to the students. Some of our students have their internship ready the moment that they graduate. And we want to amplify that. So we're already literally working on a daily basis with finding the right education partners or donors or education providers at the same time. And for us, employment partners is essential for us. So this is the base, the ground base. And I believe I want to re-emphasize on what Dr. Aziza said about the remote online teaching. And I believe this is the future of what we're doing. We have a room, we call it the R&D room. We test a lot of things from equipment to different educational models. So we believe that the future is going to be virtual. We call it the virtual education, because we have 2 days in campus, or 3 days in campus and 2 days virtually. And we managed to graduate a full class similar to structure where we have students from Amman in the classroom, we have students in Gaza, and in the same classroom, and we have the equipment to make it seamless. And it's simulating the environment of work of the their daily educational process. Nothing has changed. We still have the ratio of 25 students have like one instructor and 2 teacher assistants working with them always. And we managed actually now to establish a whole team in Gaza virtually. We never met them in person. And I think this is exciting for us to keep growing this way. We believe actually in Google, there was they launched their year in research in search. They found out that the top search learning skill was programming during 2020. People are asking how to code. They want to learn how to code, and they want to learn how to code Python. So I believe for us to know, it's an assurance for us that we're on the right track in terms of the languages and the programming. We know everyone is asking about, but holistically to look at the whole cycle. It's not just an educational role. It's also the ecosystem involving these employers, involving the legal side, the certification, the donors, creating a full cycle where we literally have a state-of-the-art education for employment program.
I can jump in. I think those are totally inspiring examples that you're giving, and I'd love to talk to you after this to look at ways that we might even work together. I'll just add that we've also been looking quite a bit. We've been working with partners. We've been looking at some other segments as well. In particular, we've been working with corporations that have a downturn in business right now because of COVID-19, and we've been approaching them about opportunities for training and retraining some of their practicing staff and engineers in particular. So we've developed a kind of a customized master's degree program that can be done in 1 year that is fully sponsored by the employer, and then the employer saves the let's say the salary over that year. They don't have to pay the salary, but they pay a living stipend to their employees. So they're furloughing employees but upgrading them at the same time, particularly in areas where they see their business growing and going into the future. So that's another kind of segment for more adult learners, and all of that's been done or is being done online because we were forced to do it online due to COVID-19. We're also, working with, we're looking at also partnerships that build on our research strengths, because we're really a very heavy research active university. So we've been reaching out to small and medium enterprises in Lebanon and in the region to say, we have 100 PhDs housed here. They're at your disposal. We can do some projects together that can actually lead to your business being more sustainable and competitive, and can also end up funding the studies of, say, master's or PhD students who are at our university. So it's another kind of dimension that we're doing. And then, we are very interested in working more through our Center for Civic Engagement with refugee and other vulnerable populations, to provide them with computing skills that would allow them to do some freelance work. And that's a space that you guys are very well developed in, so that's something that we could probably talk about. But that's just to give a few more examples maybe of ways that partnerships are super important to all of us. I would just want to sound one note of caution, and that is that it's important never to lose sight of the larger human development aspect of building a citizenry that is capable of running a democratic society, right? So we're not just training people for a specific job, but we're also trying to boost the, let's say, the awareness and citizenship and ability to contribute in a larger way to society as a whole. So, that's part of our mission as AUB, and I think that's also yours.
I think that's so critical that we don't just partner for partnerships and just trying to, we're not, worker machine production lines. But there is also another partner that we haven't talked about, which is government partners. And I think, Dr. Aziza, I'll call on you, because I know that the government in Egypt is working hard to accredit online learning degrees, and that your organization is primed to support that. Would you be able to comment a little bit about making sure that these are going to be recognized degrees?
I'm sorry. I said I can't talk too much about what's going on in the government level because I'm not as much aware except for what is being published. But they are very interested in, because of what has happened, is to give accredit the whatever online or blended learning. AUC have followed AUB's example, and we got our programs, our university accredited for online. We just got it right smack in the middle of COVID, so that was rather convenient. And there is, so we are pushing in that direction. And in a sense, this was one of the stumbling blocks why things were not happening very much, because our degrees were not recognized by as any online degree would not be recognized by the government. We had taken a strategic position that we're going to go ahead anyway and with the programs. So what I was going to try and say is that, again, I repeat, there is an effort being made there. AUC is involved in it and pushing for it, but that's really not in our hands as much as being a advocate. But I just wanted to say that as a consequence of what is happening, one of the success stories really was happening with the graduate students and graduate degrees. They are very happy. They're very pleased with the flexibility of what online provides with them. And right now, this is the direction we're going to go on one hand. And then we have all the School of Continuing Education, where the adult continuing education is happening. And they really have started, we've launched about, I think 40 online and blended learning programs via the non-degree diplomas and certificates. And one of them is with AUB, and that has started a few years back and has been quite successful. So there are success stories, and it is, the conclusion, all of that is the motivation. If you see what's in it for you, whatever it is. In this particular case, we did not have a choice, but everybody had to go online. And I think, in a sense, the silver lining is that faculty that were not using computers to them as much as they could or wanted to, really have changed. So going back to it will never go back to what it was. But I think whatever blended or face-to-face we're going to have is going to be much more enriched than it ever was.
It's funny that you say that, Dr. Aziza, because it's really interesting that it occurred to me, just as you said, well, we were already doing this. AUB was already doing it. Luminous was already doing this. And what I find interesting is that all three institutions are already kind of cutting edge, and they're already pushing all the boundaries. And what's amazing is that corporates and governments are now working collaboratively with you to figure out how to accredit, how to use this. We just got our 2-minute warning, and I'm so grateful that we've managed to work collaboratively with the three organizations. And I'm really interested to see what is going to happen as we move forward, and hopefully, fingers crossed, without the urgency of a pandemic. What can we do when we can take a breath? I've heard a lot about how the faculty, the students, everyone feels so stressed, and there's an urgency. We got to get this done. We got to get this done now. What if we could take a step back and just say, okay, now we can go blended, and we can start working on this more slowly. And this, in 1 year's time, I hope that we'll all be meeting in Expo 2020 in Dubai to be able to pick this conversation up again and talk about just where we've come to. And so I'm really excited about it. And I want to thank each of you for taking the time to talk so honestly and openly with us, and to share these experiences. And we'll continue this conversation. And thank you to Rewired for organizing this entire conference, really. So thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.